Now, a couple orders of business. First, I am going to order a small mic so then I can film on my Mac because my Mac is secondhand and a couple things are busted. And that should resolve some of the video issues and, in theory, all of the audio issues. Um, Also, I apologize for the glasses glare. There's not a lot I can do about it. All the secondary lighting I have right now is being used to film a room. But where I think this has better audio quality than the other device, but less visual, we're going to go for that for now because February is already over halfway done, and I still haven't done a January wrap-up, and this channel is supposed to be about consistency. So let's get to it. Now, I'm going to give you the name of the book that I read, my rating, and a little bit of a pro and con. If you want me to go into details about any of these, feel free to ask. I'm going to do a little fun thing with the books in a separate video, but I don't want this to get way too lengthy. So the first book I finished was my nonfiction for the month, although I did more than one, and that was Booker T. Washington's Up From Slavery, which chronicles his early life and his push to develop a college for African American individuals and his pursuit of equality and education rights. And I don't know, I can't remember when this ended, but it does a fair chunk of his activism. And my pro for this, oh, sorry, forgive me. My rating was a 4.5. I believe my Goodreads score is a little lower because that's going to happen one way or the other just because I like having halfway points. My pro for this is that it felt very approachable, even though it was more this happened, that happened, this happened. But it also felt more in the style of a memoir or a set of letters, rather, so it didn't feel too clunky. I really can't think of a con other than maybe the length might put some people off, or maybe some people might criticize if it had maybe been edited. I didn't really research how heavy that was done, so if it is, feel free to correct me, but I really enjoyed that. The second thing I approached was my play for the month, and that was A Woman of No Importance by Oscar Wilde, and I gave that a 4. I discovered last year that I really love his writing style and his sense of humor, and my pro for this is that it absolutely continued that. It has a very snappy, witty sense of humor, but also a more subdued, and I think, the fact that he was giving women so much credit that he did in the time he was writing was great. Uh, and I'm seeing some parallels there. I think it really harnesses, the quieter power, and also the downfalls as well. For con, I'm not sure that it's a type of ending that some people might enjoy, but I can't get into that without spoilers. But I think it had a really good pacing, and I can't say that ended too soon or too long, but I think it really treaded well, but it might feel a little incomplete to some people. The third book I listened to was, and you're going to have to forgive me, but I somehow have made it through my entire life without reading Little Women. So it's my classic, and don't shoot me. I gave it a 3.5 to be generous because I can see where this would be really endearing to people and why it has lasted through time. My pro is that I can see where it's lasting. I thought there were some really endearing moments. I think that the sibling relationship was really shown well, when even today that can be a hard thing to do. On the con side, I really didn't like the format. I felt that these should be all little individual stories, not one complete volume. And maybe if it had been separated out into different books by the rough ages or time frames of the girls' lives, maybe I would have enjoyed that more than to take it all in at once. I have no problem with longer books. It just felt more episode of the week, I guess. Because of the choppiness, it made some of the more dramatic moments not hit as much as they should. But like I said, I'm not trying to shame anyone's favorite. It definitely had its good points. Moving on before I go too long. The next one I approached was A Dance with Dragons, which is the latest book in the Song of Ice and Fire or Game of Thrones books by George R.R. Martin. I gave that a 4.5 personally. On Goodreads, I think I gave it a 4 because I can understand why this one might drag a little bit for people. But my pro side of this, and that is why, is that it does delve into the more political side of things, the world, what's going on because of all of this rather than the direct battles. And I can see why that might be dragging for some people who are more into the action, but I really appreciate that kind of building because at this point in the game, no pun intended, you really do need to see the consequences as well as, what are people getting up to. And it wasn't completely devoid of action. I know that there was a lot of travel and a lot of behind the scenes that people didn't like. So on the con side, there you have it. My pro is your con. After that, I finished up Phineas Finn. Thank you, Steve Donahue. It's the second in a series by one of his favorite Victorian authors. And this follows a whole bunch of new people and this one young, very lucky, very charming lawyer as he tries to rise to Parliament and his romantic entanglements. Now, on the pro side of this, I did like the look of the time. I actually found Phineas rather refreshing, which I know a lot of people think he's the most boring character, and he is, but I appreciated his almost innocence rather than arrogance, when a lot of characters like him can just be total blah. My con with this, I really loved the political aspects of this. I loved the character aspects of this, but I don't think they were melded together well. I think if Trollope had gone for one method other than the other, or rather one approach rather than the other, it would have been really fantastic, and I probably would have liked it as much as the first, but it just didn't really come together as well for me. I returned to nonfiction and I read The Rush, America's Fevered Rush for Fortune. That chronicles several people's stories as they headed out to California during the Great Gold Rush. I gave that a 3.5. I thought that the way it was done in a more narrative, multi-perspective form worked really well to show a few different ways that this event affected the country and the individuals. On the con side, wished it had gotten a little more into the racial tensions and international tensions that it also created and surfaced. It does a little bit, and I like that, but it could have done a little more, even though that might not have been its goal. It also kind of felt a little abrupt when it came towards the end, just like it was running the clock, but I found it interesting for someone who that's one part of American history that I don't know a whole lot about, and I'm glad it kind of eased me in. The next thing I moved on to was our Dark Duet, and that is the conclusion of a duology of the Verity, I think it's called, the Monsters of Verity series, in which you have a alternate version of America in which crimes turn into actual monsters, and the type of crime that's committed created one of three different types of monsters. And this is about the kind of concluding battle between the military force who keeps these monsters in check and the sort of gangs and mobs and all that type of stuff. Pro side, I thought that the ending took a lot of guts for this author to put out there. I really appreciate that they were willing to go to certain places with certain characters and have them experience certain things. I was kind of punched in the gut a little bit for multiple reasons. Nothing without giving anything away. I mean, there's a lot that happens that I wouldn't expect it all to be in one. Con side, I felt like there was still so much more of this world that could be had. I like that, you want to end on a good note, and this ended on a good note, but there's so much to this world that is great. I mean, we're only in one district of this place, and I really would like, it was almost a tease to give us a taste of another area, but what you gonna do? It was great. I'm gonna ask your patience for this because I said I don't read romance, and I don't in general. But this involved a couple themes that I really enjoy, which are hockey, family relations, and LGBT representation. And so this was Score, and I gave it a 4. It follows a minor league hockey player when he stumbles into his new team. He also stumbles into the life of a ex-Marine mechanic who is raising his siblings because they were orphaned. If you had asked me that I would be rating a romance of 4, I probably would have thought you were crazy, but this dealt really well on my pro side with family dynamics. The writer obviously knew about the sport, which is great. it also dealt, and maybe the most importantly, with the various forms of PTSD, not perfectly, but it addressed them not only from the military perspective, but from, personal trauma. And I really like how that melded together. On the con side, it kind of all wrapped up in a bow a little too nicely. I've heard a lot of people have issues with the editing in the book format, but since I was listening to it, I didn't get caught up by that. So maybe it's just a genre thing. I wish that things hadn't been so clean and nice, but for the bulk of it, I enjoyed it. And I could have done without the smut, but that's just something you gotta accept if you're reading a book like that. Then I moved on to Blood, Water, Paint, and this is a book about the Renaissance artist Artemisia Gentileschi, who is one of the few women painters of the time. I don't consider this a spoiler because she is a historical figure, but she experiences a traumatic event and ends up going to court over it. And this is very high profile. Women just did not speak up. If something happened against you, you dealt with it because you're probably not going to win and you're just going to pretty much be disowned. Period. On the pro side, this is one of the most unique reads I have ever gone into. It almost has 4 perspectives in that you have Artemisia's tale of the current time. You have her mother telling her these biblical stories that she's painting. You have the stories of the women that are being painted about. I can't even describe it. This definitely is a puzzler, so that leads me into a con, and that structure is something that is not going to click for everyone. It's going to be very difficult. I actually want to pick up a physical copy of this because I want to see how it's laid out, because that could make a big difference. After that, I returned to Blue Lily, Lily Blue, which is the 3rd in the Raven Boy cycle. I gave it a 4 because this is very much a transition novel, I believe. So on the pro side, I actually enjoy things like this when they're necessary, and I do think it does because while the previous books, this chronicles a set of teenage boys in their quest to find a magical, dead Welsh king to grant them a wish, and the girl who gets tied in with him who comes from a psychic family, and this is more about their continued search and their search for her mother, and it gets into how all of this stuff is coming together and affecting the real world, if you will. What has everything that's been going on tying into their lives as ordinary humans, if you will. They are human, just that it's not the issues of dealing with the magical as much, even though that's definitely in there, but it's also, how is it affecting the everyday progress in addition to this hunt. And I really liked that. On the con side, it isn't as action-packed as some of the others. There's definitely mysteries, and there's still this hunt and some personal drama, but it isn't as impactful, maybe, as the previous 2. But I think it's necessary, so I don't really see that as a con. Oh well. After that, I moved on to another kind of unique read, and it's a very short middle grade series. It's Sunny. I think it's the track series, maybe. And it's about this group of kids who are on this track team. But this particular book deals with Sunny, who decides that one day he doesn't want to do track. It's something that's been pushed upon him. He wants to dance. And somehow his track master takes his coach, rather, takes his passion and still finds a way to include him. And the pro of this is this really dealt with becoming into your own. I think this is great, especially for this age range, and really dealing with, this is traumatic, but I want to move on. This is what I want to do, and addressing family issues and friend issues. And it was really great. And the narration was amazing. On the con side, I really can't think of anything. It's not going to take you a long time to read. It's middle grade. It's short. It has a lot of personality. I just say, hey, and it's still Black History Month, and it's written by a Black author. Go for it. Try it out. If you're a quirky person, and if you're a book reader, you probably are, you're really going to appreciate this character.